chair of the Visioning Advisory Committee. He's on the Beaverton Planning Commission. He's involved with the Beaverton Civic Plan Steering Committee. And his goal is to build a better Beaverton. So let's hear from candidate Mark Fagin.
Forum. I appreciate you providing this opportunity. I also want to thank those of you watching at home on TV and on the internet. I hope that you're able to learn a little bit more about me and my campaign. To start off, I'm a husband to I have a very supportive wife, Shelley. We have 4 kids, all young adults, all graduates from Beaverton schools, and soon all of them will be college graduates as well. I coached them all as they grew up. Through many sports. There was baseball and softball. My favorite was soccer. I played it as a kid. And it's something I absolutely loved. And I wanted to make sure as a coach that I gave that love on to the kids. And it's kind of fun to come back here for this today because we have many awards banquets here. And standing up in front here, handing out stuff to the kids is something I really enjoyed doing. I'm also a small business owner. My company, Gaston Sales, is a manufacturer's representative firm. We sell products that go into the manufacturing of silicon, semiconductors, solar cells. We also have customers that do biomed, medical devices, and some alternate energy companies. Great things are happening in Beaverton right now, and our future looks bright. We have great neighborhoods, businesses, schools, and parks, and a fantastic reputation for public safety, livability, and sustainability. We need city leaders who know their job is to invest on the things that build on our strengths. We also face a number of challenges. Our economy is slowly stabilizing, but many are struggling with poverty, homelessness, or disability. Our schools are facing dramatic cuts, and seniors are struggling. I've worked hard to bring our community together around a common vision and to provide a plan for improving the city that we love. As Beaverton evolves, we need to organize and make sure that nobody gets left behind. As a member of City Council, my priorities will include accelerating job growth, keeping public involved in city government, and common sense solutions for our transportation problems. We know that 75% of jobs are created by existing businesses. I will push for the city to initiate a buy local program to support Beaverton businesses first. I will build on Beaverton's renewed reputation as a great place for businesses to thrive. I will regularly communicate with our businesses, large and small, to stay alert to the challenges that they face today and in the future. Better understanding will let us assist in business expansion, which will help us create more jobs in our community. I was instrumental in moving the award-winning community vision forward. We've made great strides as a city with our program. We must follow through on that promise and keep our standards for public involvement high. People who live in Beaverton are educated, involved, want their voices heard, and expect transparency from city government. We need leaders who understand our priorities and have the discipline to stay focused. I have listened to our community, I have done my homework, and I understand the importance of public input. Solving transportation problems needs to be front and center on the city's agenda. Citizens have said time and again that transportation is Beaverton's #1 issue. There are big regional projects underway right now that will make far-reaching recommendations on the future of roads that cut through our city, like Canyon Road. I've studied Beaverton's transportation needs and will advocate for our city. I will fight for transportation dollars and attention to Beaverton's needs, including road improvements, better intersection designs, smart signals, and more. As my children grew and went to college, I was able to get involved as a volunteer for the city of Beaverton. I had the privilege of serving as the city's chair of the Vision Advisory Committee for 3 years. Our job was to talk to people and ask them about their priorities for the city's future and to develop a plan to deliver on those priorities. I'm proud to say we did the job well. We ended up earning national and regional recognition for our innovative approach to public involvement. Through this experience, I was able to be part of reaching out to thousands and get their input. I formed a solid understanding of our priorities as a community. We're used to hearing candidates say they care about reaching out for public input, but I have a proven track record of doing so, and this has helped solidify my drive to follow through on the community priorities. On the Civic Plan Steering Committee, I learned more about the planning process and working in the downtown core, from investigating the best ways to get traffic flowing smoothly to making the city more walkable. The experience of working through a planning process has provided me with the knowledge of how to properly design a more livable city. We also developed in-depth strategies for addressing Beaverton's challenges outside the downtown core. We analyzed Beaverton's economy, future housing needs, and land use and transportation challenges, all through the filter of how we can sustainably plan for our future. Participation on this committee has prepared me to understand the interrelationships of complex issues that city councilors face. My recent experience as a member of the City Council's Planning Commission has given me exposure to the codes and regulations that help us maintain order as we grow and renew areas of our city. Understanding the code and how it is applied is an important part of being a city councilor. The Planning Commission makes decisions and passes it on to City Council for final approval. Understanding the process of how it fits together is very important. All of these experiences have provided me with a well-rounded understanding of what the community wants, how we can achieve it, and how we can make things happen. Now that you've heard a little bit about me, understand my priorities, and see my experience, I hope you will come to the same conclusion as those that have endorsed me. Mayor Doyle, City Councilors Catherine Arnold, Ian King, Mark Sansucci, and Kathy Stanton, the Beaverton Area Chamber of Commerce, the Beaverton Police Association, the Tualatin Valley Firefighters, the OLCV, and many more. I am ready to be your next city councilor. I appreciate your support, and I need your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Our next candidate will be Rob Soloman. He's a candidate for Beaverton City Council Position 3. Rob is a former board member of the Highland Neighborhood Association. He's a consultant to businesses and government around negotiating, problem solving, and leadership. Rob is the owner of a private practice to do with mental health in part of the small business here in Beaverton for 22 years. Rob is the former chair of the Washington County Commission on Children. Currently, he is the chair of Beaverton's Human Rights Advisory Commission. It gives me great pleasure to bring forward to you candidate Rob Soloman.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Thank you, John, for the wonderful introduction. And Mark, thank you very much. Folks, I want to express my appreciation to the forum for giving us this opportunity to chat with you. And what I wanted to do was give you a little bit of information about me and some things to think about before we open it up to questions. I was born and raised in Winnipeg, Canada, and when I was about 15 or 16 years old, one of my friends came up to me and said, you know, you really should get involved in politics. And at the age of 15 or 16, we won't discuss my exact comments in response to that, but it was something like, why? Why in the world should a young person, or should anybody get involved in politics? The answer impressed me very much. The answer was, why should you let other people make decisions for you that impact your life without folks and people with mental health issues, and then was able to move out to Eugene, where I took the position of running a council on alcoholism there for a few years. Then I went to for-profit hospital-based units and came to the conclusion that I was so tired of being the administrator for these centers, I wanted to work with people again. So I opened up a private practice about 23, 24 years ago, spent 1 year in an office in Tigard, and then moved to Beaverton. I've been living in Beaverton for 25 years, but moved my practice here about 23 years ago. I've had a wonderful opportunity to work with lots of people, individuals, families, groups, from a mental health, substance abuse point of view. Yes, I did do some time working with the Washington County Commission on Children and Families over 20 years ago. I did serve on my neighborhood association and was very, very gratified to learn about the NACs and our NAC system in Beaverton, a wonderful system of involvement that could use some improvement. During my time in the NAC and talking with members of council at that time, I was very interested in becoming a member of one of the commissions. After a year of serving on the City's Human Rights Advisory Commission, perhaps I left the room at the wrong time, or perhaps I stayed in the room at the right time, but they elected me as chair. I'm in my 4th year as chair. And what the commission has done over the last several years in continuing its efforts to promote human rights in our city, we've been running contests for youth every year, wonderful contests. We get just fantastic submissions. We are responsible for seeking nominations for the Mayor's Human Rights Award. And in addition to that, what we've brought over the last few years, we've brought community education. We bring people in every second month to talk about issues in our community, profound issues, important issues, human trafficking. The whole idea is to raise the profile of the Human Rights Advisory Commission and human rights issues so that our community is better educated, better informed, and knows where to go when there are issues of concern. Why am I running for city council? Well, I'm haunted by the idea that I learned when I was a teenager. I don't want other people to make decisions for me. I think it's important to have strong, independent voices in government, in all levels of government, and I'm looking forward to taking some of my ideas and some of my issues to that level. One of my most important concerns, and we've heard it mentioned today, Mark referred to it, is citizen involvement. Beaverton does a wonderful job of inviting and welcoming people to be involved in the process. Mark and myself are 2 wonderful examples of it. We've been welcomed, we've been encouraged, and we've been supported in our relative volunteer work, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But there's some issues here that I think we could do a little bit better on. Recent census suggests that 25% of our population are visible minorities. And the mayor is very, very fond of saying that we welcome everyone to Beaverton. And I know that we do, but it's one thing to say that we welcome people. We need to be more proactive in our efforts to reach out and involve the wonderful talents, the wisdom, the strengths of our minority community. I've had a wonderful opportunity with a wonderful group of people to reach out in that area, but it's my hope that as a city councilor, I can provide an even better effort at that outreach and meet with greater success. There's too many people, minorities and non-minorities, that have so much to offer our community, and it's time for us to get out there and bring them in, not just invite them and welcome them. As we're about to enter into a question and answer period, if I may, I'd like to toss out just a couple of ideas that I'd like you to think about, perhaps express your concerns. We've been listening. Our campaign has been listening to folks in Beaverton. I have some concerns. I think there are some issues, and I've heard some issues from some people. Traffic is an issue. And yes, I think timed traffic lights can do a marvelous, marvelous positive impact on our community. Not just increasing the opportunity to, not just in dealing with traffic issues, but also in pollution. I've learned in some of my research about timing traffic lights so that people aren't sitting at red lights for so long. We can clean up the air as well as traffic all at the same time. One of the other issues that I'd like to put on the table for consideration with this August body and and with voters as we continue to talk, Beaverton is now over 90,000 people. Over 90,000. Perhaps it's time that we look at a different representational system for our councillors. We elect 5 councillors at large from the city. I'd like to at least explore the opportunity to look at a ward system where each councillor would represent a segment of the community, 1/5 of the community. There are other issues. There are issues concerning the environment. There are issues concerning citizen participation. And I know we just are just about out of time. I hope we'll bring up some of your concerns. Thank you very much.
And now we'd like to open it up to 2 questions. The microphone's on both sides of the room, so come and we'll alternate back and forth, and candidates will answer your questions.
Jim Cape, 4 member. Question about urban renewal. The majority of the school district, fire district, and park district are outside of Beaverton, yet the city is planning to withhold tens of millions of tax dollars from each of the service districts. How will you inform city residents that they will be receiving less community service? Because the greater community isn't going to just cover for minority Beaverton not taking its share of community services. Thank you.
The only honest answer I can give to that question is, it's not my understanding that there is going to be that much of a cost. When we took a look at urban renewal, which I was happy to support, I did the best research I possibly could as far as how it would impact in particular the school division. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't see that level of impact. I'm more than happy to do some more research and see if I can find something that would support your assertions. I'll turn it over to Mark.
And I'd have to agree with that as far as the total number of dollars that you're concerned about. I think there was, urban renewal was done in Beaverton right, in that we included the service districts as part of the people at the table that helped set it up. Unlike some other cities, there's a definite stop date partway through urban renewal. There's a look back period to make sure the values are increasing, and each of the special districts unanimously approved of our urban renewal and supported it. And the reason is because they see the benefit long-term outweighing the short-term. And that's why.
You still didn't answer the question. There's going to be reduction in services. There has to be.
I don't know if there will be.
The money comes from services.
Bill Kroger, is this on? Bill Kroger, forum member. I have 2 quick questions. One is I was interested in your thoughts about pushing 125th in the southeast end of town through to Hall Boulevard. It's Hall Boulevard, I think. The second question is, both of you own businesses, you're busy guys. Being a city councilor is a busy job, so I was wondering if you talk a little bit about how you're going to balance your time for those.
Just trade off.
On the 125th extension, I think that's been in our comprehensive plan for a while. I think when we go forward with it, it will be done so in a way that involves the community as a whole. But it's there, it's on the plans. I think that's going to happen. As far as time goes, I ran for council 2 years ago, and one of my biggest concerns in running for council then was time. I don't do things halfway. When I do something, I'm all in. And I was talking to the councilors that were on council 2 years ago, and one who has passed since was Bruce Dalrymple. And Bruce was a business person as well. He owned a business and he traveled for business. I talked with Bruce at length about, can this be done, owning a business and doing city council right? And he said, yes, you can do it if you can say no, and if you can schedule your time, and I can do both of those. Thank you.
The first question, Bill, about 125th. I've had a wonderful time the last month and a half talking to voters about things, not just human rights issues. And that has come up at the door several times. And if I just take a quick poll about how many want to open it up and how many don't, based on my experience, it's about 50-50. Based on my research, I agree it's in the comprehensive plan and it needs to be done. It would alleviate more traffic issues than it would, than problems it would cause, at least in my understanding. The second question, you know, I think it's wonderful that Beaverton is able to give an honorarium to counselors, but obviously it's not a salary. I had thought of running a couple of years ago, and just to be perfectly candid, I couldn't afford it. But my financial situation with my business is such that I'm able to cut back, and I'm able to devote at least half time, if not more, to the position. And like my opponent, I don't go into things part way either. I'm more than prepared to commit the time needed. Thank you.
Eric Squires, former member. I volunteer with something called a CPO program, and I serve the area that is between Hillsborough and Beaverton. Citizen involvement is what I volunteer to do, and I'm very curious as to, because it's been a topic mentioned so far, what do you find wrong with Beaverton citizen involvement, and what would each of you do to change the status quo?
I heard Kathy say that there's nothing wrong with it, and I actually, to tell you the truth, I kind of agree with Councillor Stanton. I think that, like everything, nothing is perfect, and I love the way the city reaches out with the cards every year, inviting people to get involved in boards and commissions, etc. But you know, there's something really interesting. One thing, just one piece to answer your question. The neighborhood associations are set up as a vehicle for two-way communication. And over the last several years, not just the involvement in my neighborhood association, but also with some work across the board with other NACs, I see it much more as a vehicle to disseminate information. The city has, with not only the fire and the police and other folks there, I think they give out really good information on a regular basis. But I don't think people show up so much to listen. I think if they thought they would be heard, if we could have a segment like City Council does, 5 minutes of input, I think we could not only bring in more people, but also get better two-way communication. Just one thought, and thank you.
As the former chair of the Vision Advisory Committee, I think we do a really good job at public outreach in Beaverton. I think that one of the things we've done as a Vision Advisory Committee is to innovate how we go out and do public research or public input. I think the traditional send out a survey, post a survey online, try and engage with people is really a challenge in this day and age because we're all so busy. And what we wanted to do as a committee was go to where people are. So we started going to the farmers market. We started going to the MAC station. We started talking to citizens where they were and engaging them, getting their input as far as what their concerns were and what their priorities were for our city. So I think there are other innovative ways we can do outreach, and I think those will come as we continue to do.
Kathy Stanton, former member. First of all, regarding 125th, it's been on the comprehensive plan for 40 years. 40 years, guys. It's the old man on that CIP program. My question has to do with something candidate Soloman said about looking at moving to a ward system for the city councilors. My question goes a step beyond that, and give me your thoughts on looking at our form of governance, as we are one of the few cities in the state that have a strong mayor, which means that we don't have a paid professional city manager. Tell me your thoughts on that.
The form of government that we enjoy in Beaverton is a little unique in our state, but not necessarily in our country. A strong mayor form of government gives us a city manager and a mayor in one person, and I think that we are happy with our current mayor and our current form of government. It doesn't mean investigating it is not a bad thing, but I think right now things are good. What we get in this form of government is we get represents us managing our city as well. And we have the ability to change things if we need to. The interesting thing to me on this is how we got to a strong mayor. And that was because we had a city manager council arrangement that wasn't providing what the community wanted. Right now, we have a strong mayor form of government that provides what the community wants. And as long as that continues, I think we've got the right form of government.
I guess I should have known I could count on Councillor Stanton to ask the most difficult question of all. Because quite frankly, I can argue both sides of that question. I think that there are distinct advantages to having a professional city manager. Just because someone runs for mayor and is interested in leading a city does not necessarily mean that they have the capabilities that a professional city manager would bring to the job. However, the reason I can't pursue that is because I think Beaverton is very lucky, and right now has a mayor who is not only a competent, capable leader, but is also a competent and capable administrator. I would like to leave it open on the table that perhaps it would be a time at some point in the future to change our city form of government. Right now, I don't see any need to change, and I can't advocate that kind of change at this moment. I would only add that I think that the ward system, some ward system like that, giving the councillors greater opportunity to communicate successfully with the people they represent, would add to the opportunity to provide better government. Thank you very much.
John Tyner, board member. I'd like to ask a tough question too, but I was a lifelong Beaverton resident. I live outside the city boundaries right now. And the problem with Beaverton, and I'd ask you how you address this, is the fact that almost neighborhood associations are almost too important. They've trumped any north, south, east, west, major arterial for the last 40 years, and any attempt to expand transportation. So Beaverton's a nice place to live, but it's a terrible neighbor because they put the transit through there is just horrible. And I can go back to my high school days when they were complaining about transit. But at every point, either a developer put a house in the middle of a proposed extension of a road, or a neighborhood association trumped that. How are you going to actually improve transportation through Beaverton? That's of particular importance since Allow is trying to see how we can integrate our transportation system given the growth in South Hillsborough. How can you be a better neighborhood to the community at large, not just to your neighborhood associations?
You succeeded in asking another tough question. You know, it's really quite interesting. The only way that I can really answer that honestly and openly is to encourage the neighborhood associations to perhaps get together in order to talk in terms of overall transportation. You know, you take a look at what an individual neighborhood association does, and they tend to be rather close-minded. I get that. You're talking in terms of an overall transportation policy for Beaverton that could integrate with the rest of Washington County, and particularly the places right close to Beaverton, that share a boundary with Beaverton. And I'm just a big fan of open communication, and I'd like to be able to see somebody like yourself be able to come to a committee, a group that's charged with that can supersede individual kind of narrow-minded interests. I hope that makes some sense. Thank you.
So I look at it from the standpoint of overall planning as the big picture. And I think that there are opportunities for people inside and outside of the city to come forward and express what their concerns are and what their needs are. Sorry, is that better? And the city does an excellent job of taking input from people regardless of where exactly they live. I don't know if you saw some of the discussion on the Peter Court annexation, but that was a council meeting where I would say the majority of the people that were there to speak were not members or not residents of the city of Beaverton. And then the other thing is to make sure you're paying attention to some of the big picture planning that's going on. The civic plan process really looked at how can we improve traffic through our downtown core. That includes people that live in Beaverton, people that work in Beaverton, and people that just transit through Beaverton. And the idea is to make it so that it's smoother, safer, and everybody can get where they're going.
Well, that seems to wrap up our questions for right now, so I think I'd like to give another really see them, but maybe they'll talk a little bit about that. Our first candidate that I would like to invite up, well, actually, maybe both candidates could come up right now and take their places up here in the chairs. And while they're on the way up, I will first introduce Allan J. Arlow. He's candidate for the judge of the Court of Appeals, Position 6. Judge Arlow is presently the administrative law judge for the Public Utilities Commission. He is a graduate of the University of Michigan, where he got his bachelor's degree. He went on to Georgetown University for his doctorate degree, and the University of Chicago for his certificate of advanced. So it gives me a good pleasure right now to introduce Allan J. Arlow, candidate for Position 6.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for inviting me to the Washington County Public Affairs Forum. I'm really glad to be here and glad that I have this opportunity to speak with you. One of the problems that people have when they want to cast an intelligent vote for a judge is that they're given really so little information. It is not possible for you to ask what their views are on very many subjects which might be of interest to you, or to question them deeply about their political philosophy or things of this sort. But I can tell you a few things about myself which should perhaps calm you or give you some ease, or at least a little bit of understanding of me and what I do and how I approach my work. First of all, I think it's important for you to all know that the Oregon State Bar Association has an appellate selection committee, and they review all potential applicants for positions to the Court of Appeals. And I have been fully vetted by that committee and found to have the work ethic, the integrity, the ability to perform the job, and I was listed as qualified by them. So that question should put your mind a little bit at ease. Another thing you need to know is that I've had over 12 years of experience as a judge, and I've written thousands of orders and rulings and decisions, and I've presided in hundreds of cases. Some of them are very simple cases. A complaint by a family that their utility service is going to be shut off when they believe that they have paid the bill. Another situation, for example, where there's a fight between the water company and a homeowners association to say who's responsible for removing the snow from fire hydrants. At the other end of the spectrum, I've also presided over some pretty big cases. For example, whenever there's a major rate case, such as when PG&E wants to raise people's rates, or whenever there's a major merger, as for example when CenturyLink acquired Quest Corporation. I reviewed all of those, and those are very complex technically, and they require a great deal of understanding, not only of the technical aspects of how those businesses are run, but also of finance, economics, and regulatory law. And so I've been doing this, as I said, for 12 years. Now, obviously, you can see by the color of my hair, I didn't just start practicing law 12 years ago. I actually took my first bar exam in 1969, and I took my bar exam here in Oregon 30 years later. So at least I remember how to study. Prior to the time that I came to Oregon, my only job in Oregon, by the way, has been to be a judge. But prior to that time, I spent a great deal of time as an attorney in a corporate environment, and I was a general counsel of two corporations, subsidiaries of AT&T and Ameritech Corporation, an associate general counsel of a company called Centel, all very large companies. And I was speaking to Mr. Bunnell here, who's a general counsel at Regents Blue Cross Blue Shield. And he knows that just because you're in one particular industry, such as the health industry, it doesn't mean you're only dealing with health law. It means you run the gamut of everything from commercial transactions to securities issues to personnel matters. And so I've had the opportunity in my corporate life to see a great variety of legal problems in a number of different businesses. And in addition to that, you have occasionally some odd and interesting cases that come up that you wouldn't ordinarily expect to occur. For example, here at the Public Utility Commission, the American Civil Liberties Union of Oregon came in and they filed a complaint against Verizon and Quest because during the post-9/11 era, what happened was that there were accusations which first broke in the New York Times that Verizon and Qwest had been providing data to the National Security Administration regarding the telephone calls of their customers, called data mining, without getting any kind of court order. And so the ACLU said, we need to find out about what was going on because it violates the rules of privacy that the Public Utility Commission has. At any rate, we started to gear up on this case. But as you can imagine, for these companies and also for the nation, it was considered a very touchy issue. And so before long, the Ninth Circuit issued an order to us saying, I want you to hold off a little bit until we decide what to do. And before I had a chance to really sink my teeth into the case, Congress passed amendments to the federal laws regulating foreign intelligence surveillance and ultimately said, you can't go into that. And so we never really did find out what was going on. But this is an example of the fact that occasionally we deal with constitutional law issues or issues that may seem outside of the ordinary course of your work. Now, as far as the type of work that I do, I really enjoy it. And I have had an opportunity, as I said, to do so many different kinds of law, even though I'm kind of a specialist in telecommunications. And I have testified as an expert witness before Congress on a number of occasions. And I have had work published by the National Academy of Sciences on bringing the internet to rural America. But I think what would be more important for me in the Court of Appeals is that I take all of this experience that I've had and take it beyond the area of utility law, water law, telecommunications law, and apply it more broadly to many of the issues that are facing the state of Oregon on the Court of Appeals. And other than that, all I can just tell you is that I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all, and I'm eager to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Arlow. I would say that our next candidate was going to be James Egan. He was contacted, but has not replied, so he's not here, obviously. Our next candidate, though, is for the Judge of the Court of Appeals, Position 6. This is Tim Volpert. Tim is practicing law. He's been practicing law for 29 years, attorney partner with Davis Wright, Tremaine, LLP. Tim's practice emphasized appellate litigation in the state and federal courts. His education that he received his BS in political science from Soloman College in Richmond, Indiana. Went on to Willamette University School of Law to get his next degree. So right now I want to introduce Mr. Tim Volpert.
Thank you very much. Again, I should thank you for taking the time to talk, to let us talk to you. Since we're just the candidates for the Court of Appeals, you know, there's 2 Supreme Court races. We're getting a lot of attention, and Allan and I are feeling a little bit neglected, I think. So we really appreciate this opportunity. As you'll see when I tell you a little bit about myself, one of the things I do is teach civics to high school students. So I wanted to clarify a little bit of something that Allan said when he talked about being a judge. Neither Allan nor I are judges in the sense that we have ever been elected under the Oregon Constitution as we're trying to be now, or have ever been appointed by the judge the governor as judges. Neither of us have had an opportunity to do that. Neither of us have overseen jury trials or made orders or judgments that get entered and then are subject to appeal. What Allan does is a very interesting thing. He's called an administrative law judge, and he's an employee of the Public Utilities Commission. He makes orders and recommendations that are then accepted or approved by the Public Utilities Commission or not, and then those orders are entered. So I just want to make that clarification. And also when Allan talked about his being approved by the bar, I think that was in a prior attempt for an appointment, and I just wanted to let everybody know that that's not in this race. In this race, there's an actual judicial preference poll that's been sent out to, I think, all 14,000 members of the bar. I think the results of that are going to be due in about a week. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes down. Like Allan said, I can't really tell you much about my beliefs in terms of what I would do if I were elected. But so it's basically telling you a little bit about myself. So let me just do that. I was born in Indiana and met my wife there in college. Her family had moved from Ohio 60 of those have been actually handling cases representing clients before the Oregon Court of Appeals, again, the court that Allan and I are running for. One of the ones I'm most proudest of was in 1995. I had the opportunity to represent the Vernonia School District, Vernonia, Oregon School District, before the United States Supreme Court. I argued that case in March of 1995, and we were able to convince the court that their program of random urinalysis drug testing of student athletes did not violate the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution. It was at that point that I had that opportunity that I was able to move my practice away from perhaps maybe half trial work to half appeal work to what it has been for the last 17 years, which is 80% or more appellate cases. So I know this court, I know the court that I'm running for. I have practiced before it many, many times. I have worked there. I know the rules. I know the standards. I've also, ever since I started practicing, I'm very proud to say that I've immersed myself in my community. In 1985, I received the Senior Law Project Award for Outstanding Service for providing pro bono legal services to senior citizens. About then, I became involved in Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, was a longtime board member and secretary of the Board of Ecumenical Ministries. I was also on the board, past president of the Classroom Law Project, and am still on that board some 20 years later. After the Vernonia case, a few years later, in 2002, I got involved in what has been my kind of passion in terms of community service for the last 10 years. I got involved with the teacher at Grant High School. I live in the Grant High School neighborhood. My kids have both gone to Grant in the public schools. And we decided that we wanted to put together a constitution team. I don't know if you folks have ever heard about the Lincoln High School constitution team. That it's basically, it's a class, turns into a competition. You teach the kids about constitutional law, you teach them about history, you teach them about citizenship, about civics. It turns into a competition. It's like a congressional hearing format. Lincoln was perennial champion for 13 years, and we decided we were going to take them on, and we put together a team in the year 2000. And for the last 12 years, myself, a very able teacher at Grant High School, and 12 attorneys that I've recruited as volunteer attorney coaches have been working on this program. I'm proud to say that we've been at the top 10 at nationals the last 7 years, seven times in the top 10 of the competition during the last 12 years that the program's been working. We call it Little League for Lawyers. We have a lot of fun doing it, and quite frankly, we've learned a tremendous amount about constitutional law and history and the like in the course of doing that program. The Court of Appeals is an intermediate appellate court. It receives an incredibly broad number of appeals. It receives appeals from every trial court, every board, every commission, et cetera, in Oregon. So a Court of Appeals judge needs to know Oregon law and needs to know what it's like to practice in Oregon courts. And I'm proud to say, as I said before, that I've been doing that for 30 years. I feel like I've been there, I've done that, I've actually touched upon representing Oregon clients to virtually every area of the law the Court of Appeals covers. I just tell you that I'm proud to say I've been endorsed by some folks that in the voters pamphlet. I'll just tell you who they are. Congressman Earl Blumenauer, Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici, former State Senator Neil Bryant, Reverend John Dennis, State Representative Lou Frederick, former Oregon Supreme Court Justice W. Michael Gillette, for whom I clerked, former Attorney General Hardy Myers, the Oregon Education Association, Governor Barbara Roberts, and the current District Attorney Michael Strunk. I'm running out of time, but I'll also say that I decided if I was going to get in this race, I was going to go out and I was going to meet folks around the state. I've been just about everywhere there is to be at this point. I've been to Eugene, I've been to Albany, I've been to Astoria, and Coos Bay, and Brookings, and Bend, and of course I've been to Willamette Week. I'll be doing the Statesman Journal next week. The week after that, I'll be doing the Eastern Oregonian. LeGrand, please close. I'm out of time. I'm having a really good time. I put a lot of mileage on my car, and I appreciate your time, and I hope you'll give me
shortly, given the nature of the work of the court and your skill set, and that another panel, a fourth panel, is essentially coming on board, how do you think that will affect the policy of automatically affirming various agency opinions? Will that change in any way?
Well, I hope that the number of AWOP cases will go down. I would like to see more cases decided. And one of the things which I would also welcome about the fact that there be more judges is that we will be able to have a broader group of skill sets. Now, one of the skill sets, of course, that I bring is the fact that I've been working in agency law, administrative law for a long time, and so I'm very familiar with that. And I also have a background in other areas of the law which are not currently represented on the bench. And so I think by having a greater number of judges on the bench, the chief, whoever the new chief will be able to assign more easily cases to those people who would be able to most efficiently handle them because they'll be further along the learning curve. And that's what I hope to see, and I welcome the addition of judges to the panel. I think it will help the whole dynamic.
I do too. The biggest trick that the Court of Appeals has created 3 new judges. They have not appropriated funds yet to pay their salaries, unfortunately. That's been right for the 2013 legislature, but I very much hope that we do get 3 additional judges. What Allan just referred to as an AWOP, which that's what we call cases that are affirmed without opinion. Statistically now, I think approximately 70% of the cases that make their way to the Oregon Court of Appeals are decided without telling the litigants why. They're affirmed without telling the litigants why. And I think it's a very busy court. I don't blame the court at all for doing that, but I think it's so worthwhile when you can tell your client, why it is they lost. I'm fortunate to say that in the cases that I've handled in that court, 60 or more cases, I think it's happened twice to me where I've had cases affirmed without opinion, where I thought that we should win the cases, and it's devastating to the client. They just don't understand. I had one a couple of years ago representing some folks down near Medford in a high-end mobile home park, and we were trying to evict a tenant, and we were unsuccessful, and we got the AWOP, and I said, look, I think we can take this case to the Oregon Supreme Court. I think they'll accept this case. And I'll never forget the guy said, my family and I don't want to have anything more to do with the Oregon court system. We're done. And it was really kind of chilling to me. I thought to myself, well, I understand that. You just paid me a lot of money. I told you and believe that we have a very good case. The court didn't even tell you why. I would hope that I can at least pick out cases like that and say, well, at least I'm going to write a page. At least I'm going to give some explanation.
Bill Kroger, board member, thank you both for being here today. Since 9/11, especially, our civil liberties have been diminished. If I'm not mistaken, I think habeas corpus was suspended, and I'm not sure it's been put back. Well, some of the things, but a lot of things have been diminished. And the Supreme Court just ruled on strip searches for pretty minor offenses. I know this doesn't pertain to you guys specifically, but there are civil liberties issues every level of the legal system, and I was just wondering if you could sort of talk in general about your feelings about the protection of civil liberties.
Well, I think obviously civil liberties are a very important issue. And I can tell you a little bit about my background. When I first was in law school, I clerked for a firm in Northern Virginia called Cohn Hirschhop Hall & Jackson. And Phil Hirschkopf was the lawyer who handled the case before the Supreme Court called Loving versus the State of Virginia, which basically struck down, as any of you familiar with these constitutional cases, the anti-miscegenation laws. In Virginia, it was against the law for people of different races to be married to each other. And while working in that firm, I also, I wasn't able to work on that particular case, but I did do other ACLU cases relative to, one case was about getting the former head of the American Nazi Party buried in Arlington National Cemetery. But at any rate, there are a number of issues that I have with the direction of the court, the Supreme Court of the United States right now, which I don't agree with. As a matter of fact, with respect to the Vernonia case, if you want to ask questions about that, I can comment about the Vernonia case as well.
I bet you could. Vernonia was the case that I handled in which the court held that the Fourth Amendment did not prevent suspicionless drug testing of student athletes, and Currently, I'm handling a case as the attorney for the ACLU, representing 6 peace activists who were arrested for conducting a peace vigil on the Capitol steps. And I just argued that case in the Court of Appeals about 2 weeks ago. So I've got the Vernonia skeleton in my closet, but I've paid my penance, and I'm a strong civil libertarian. I guarantee you that. Thank you.
Chris Leslie, foreign member. Oliver Holmes is one of my heroes, and he suspended the illegal habeas corpus in World War I. He had reasons to do that. Would you reflect on why that was proper?
Well, I must say, during times of war, we've often had habeas corpus suspended. I really don't think I can get into it at this stage because it's really beyond the scope of what we do at the state level, especially the State Court of Appeals. I think one of the things that we may have learned over time is that every time we try to react because we perceive there is some immediate emergency that requires that act, we look back long term and we regret it. And sometimes it is just difficult to control our anger, control our own fears, and realize that yes, we will get through these hard times. And we have to come together as a nation and not just say, well, we're frightened, so take away civil rights.
Habeas corpus is sometimes called the Great Writ, and basically what it does is allow someone who's being held to come to court and say, I want to be charged, I want to be tried, I can't just languish here in prison on these charges. And I wrote my senior thesis in college on Oliver Wendell Holmes, and I'm embarrassed to tell you that I can't remember the situation when he suspended the writ of habeas corpus. I know he did. I know President Lincoln did during the Civil War. I remember that there were folks that were being arrested up north, and he knew that if he tried them and set them loose, that they were going to go back down into the South and fight for the Confederacy. And he famously said that perhaps he must violate the Constitution to preserve the nation, and he was willing to do so. But unfortunately, I don't remember the specific example. I'll go look. Thank you.
Well, I think that we've been just treated to an opportunity that you don't always get when you're looking at your ballot, because you always see judges and you don't know who you're talking about. But we are very fortunate to have 2 men come today to tell us about themselves and why they should be elected to their position. So I think we need to give them a really big hand of applause. And now I'm going to call Esther, who I believe has a few more words that she'd like to tell you about.
Okay, first of all, Jim and I are going to be gone for about 4 or 5 weeks, and Jim needs to have somebody take over his position while he is away in Montana. So I will ask for people later to come up and let me know if you can take his position. That would be really great. And secondly, I want to thank the people once again, everybody, for coming and speaking to us today. I really, really appreciate it. And next week, we have the Oregon State Secretary of State Democratic candidates, which are Kate Brown and Paul Damian Wells. And topic 2 will be speakers Lisa Michaels and number 2, Delinda Morgan. So, with that, unless there's something more, we have to oops.
They're running for 1st Congressional District.
1st Congressional District. I forgot that. So, without any more and nothing more that absolutely needs to be done, have a great afternoon and evening. Thank you.